Hello and welcome to the Garden Shop. In this video I want to show you how to assess your garden soil prior to preparing it for planting in the following season. So when we talk about garden soil, what we're really talking about is a medium or a substance in which your plants will sit. Basically, a soil is a medium which holds not only plant roots but also water, air and plant nutrients. And that is really the whole function and purpose of soil. So with that in mind, we can now just look at a soil and see whether it is suitable for growing plants, therefore whether it has the ability to hold water, air and nutrients all at the same time. So there are a number of ways in which you can assess your soil. The first thing you should always do before doing any garden work is to assess the soil depth. So I'm just going to now just dig here into our vegetable plot and just see how deep our topsoil is. So you can do that just with a shovel. So dig a hole into your soil and you can just figure out how far down your topsoil actually goes. So I'm effectively noticing now I'm at the bottom of the soil here. I can feel it's a tougher soil. Now when I pull this up, I'm just going to turn that over. And maybe you can't see the difference, so I'll just bring it closer to you here. It's not very obvious here, but there are two different colours of soil. In my hand here we have our topsoil, which is a darker colour, and in my other hand here we have our subsoil, which is a lighter colour. And that's one of the easiest ways to recognise the difference between your topsoil and your subsoil, is the fact that they have different colours. They also have a lot of other different factors. Your topsoil here is darker in colour. It has a better ability to hold air and water, and it is also full of life. It has worms and insects and bacteria in it, which are all essential for good plant growth. It also holds your plant nutrients. Whereas your subsoil is more of a dead soil. It's more of a stony soil, sandier soil. So it's not suitable for growing plants in, as it has no nutrients and no life in it. So that's really the first test when you're looking at your soil, is how deep it is. Okay, so regarding how deep your soil needs to be, if you want to grow vegetables, you probably need about 1 foot to 1.5 feet of good deep topsoil. If you want to grow a lawn, you probably need about 6 inches of good topsoil. And for growing large shrubs and trees, you need at least 2 foot of good topsoil to grow a tree. So I'll just fill that hole in again. The next thing you need to do to assess your soil, and again, the reason why you assess your soil is so you can understand how to improve on your soil before sowing your crops. So now that we know that we have at least, in this place, we have at least 1.5 feet of good topsoil, this area is already fine for growing vegetables. We don't need to add any more topsoil to the area for growing vegetables. If you found that your topsoil was very shallow, it would be recommended that you would add more topsoil to your plot. Another test you can do, a very simple one, is just looking over the colour of your soil itself. Again, I'll just take some of our topsoil here, just a little clump here, and I'll bring it back over. The colour of the soil can indicate a number of different factors about your soil as well. This is kind of a medium range colour. It's not very light, it's not very dark. The darker your soil is, the more damp the soil is, but also the more nutrients in your soil. If you think of a peaty or boggy soil, you'll notice that they're darker in colour. And those are the types of soils which are more damp and also have more organic matter, and they also therefore have more nutrients. The reason why they have more organic matter in a damp soil is because there's less air in it, therefore nutrients is broken down more slowly. Okay, so what we have here is a light coloured soil, or a medium range soil. A lighter coloured soil then would be more of a sandy soil, and a sandy soil is a soil that has better drainage, more air in it, but also less nutrients in it. So there you go. Just from the colour alone we can determine the nutrient level and the drainage ability of our soils. What we see here is we have a medium light coloured soil, which means it's kind of in the middle. It's good drainage but also good nutrient level, so it's just in the middle, not high in nutrients but also not very damp. So really what you would call middle of the range colour of soil, middle of the range type of soil. The third test then on your soil is a fertility test. There's Many ways you can do a fertility test. You can do a very simple but a very effective fertility test using the soil test kit. So what you see here is you're getting 3 different test chambers, sorry, 4 different test chambers. One here is for your pH, which is your acidity level. Then you have one also for nitrogen, one for phosphorus, and one for potassium. These are the 3 most important nutrients to be added to your soil. Okay, so that's the pH, or that's the soil test kit. Another way that you can test your soil, if you don't use this, a very basic way of testing your soil, is simply just by looking over it and seeing what kind of weeds are growing in your vegetable plot. If I just take a little look over here, I don't know if you can see all the way over, but we have here a very common weed, which is the dock leaf, or the dock weed. So this is a sign of fertile soil. If you have docks growing in your garden, it's also a sign that you haven't weeded it, but also is a sign that it's high in nutrients. Other weeds to look out for, as well as dock leaves, are nettles, also thistles, and also cleavers. Those are 4 weeds that show that you have highly fertile soil. So that's like one easy way of just determining whether your soil is high in fertility or not. So that's another test you can do. Once you know your soil fertility, then there's another number of things you can add to it. If you find from maybe a soil test kit like this that you're low in potassium, you can add sulfate of potash to your soil. Again, using your soil test kit, if you find that you are low in phosphorus, you can then add superphosphate to your soil. Okay, and if you find that your soil is generally low in all 3, nitrogen, phosphorus and potassium, you could add something like a general grow more fertilizer to your soil, or a general, what we have here, which is a chicken pellet, chicken manure. So these are all, these last 2 are general multi-purpose feeds that have all of the important ingredients in them. So that's the 3rd test, that's this fertility test. And then the last test you can do is actually just to feel the soil in your hand yourself. And this helps you to determine the type of soil you have. So you might have heard before about types of soils such as clay soils, sandy soils, or loam soils. And you can determine that just by taking a soil sample in your hand and just getting a crumb and then just rubbing it between your thumb and your finger like this, and then just feeling the sort of texture or consistency of the soil sample. Okay, just by rubbing it between your fingers you can determine that. And what you're trying to figure out is the level of sand or the grittiness or the texture of your soil. So there are 3 different textures really. The first one is a silky smooth texture, and that would be when you're feeling just a very silky texture to the soil, and there's no grittiness, no sandiness or stoniness in it. If you have a silky smooth soil, then texture, then you have a clay soil. If you rub it between your fingers and it feels gritty and very coarse, then it's likely that you have a sandy soil. But if you have a silky but also gritty soil texture, then it would turn out that you have a loam soil. So they would be the 3 types of soils that we have. A loam soil is the most ideal type of soil because it has the best consistency of sand, silt and clay, which is just a perfect mixture ratio of soil particles. A clay soil is a damper soil because it just has small clay particles. It's silky, smooth to feel in your hands. And a clay soil is damp, it's harder to work, it sticks to your boots, it doesn't have much air in it, and it's not very suitable for growing crops like carrots and other root crops. If you have a gritty soil, it's gritty when you rub it in your fingers. It's a sandy soil, and sandy soils are good draining, but also lower in nutrients and higher in air content, but good also for growing root crops. So that's the breakdown of your soil assessment. Once you know what sort of soil you have, you can then go on and improve on it. So that's it really. That's a little ideas on how to assess your soil from thegardenshop.ie.